Welcome to the Corner Office, where we bring you the latest news from the world of commercial real estate, the greatest voices in the industry, and the corporate chats you've been missing. Let's get to it.
Okay, today we are here with the venerable Justin Thom, hailing out of Pretoria Boys High, and Stellenbosch University, and Galetti for the last 13 years, 12 years, whatever it is. Yeah, venerable means to be accorded respect, but it could also mean deceased Roman Catholic, which I learned just before this. So I think accorded respect is good. Justin's let just over 1.3 million square foot in the last year in logistics, which is about 125,000 square meters, so it's a significant amount of space. So I thought we'd get him in, and we went into a deep dive in logistics last week, which was actually pretty interesting, with the guys from Logistics Matters. We did 3 days getting into tracking, into how to stack the box. We played logistics games, which melted our brains, and I think it was just like actually a fascinating thing to like really get into that logistics space, to understand it a lot better, to come out and not come back to say, all right, what are we doing and how we can actually improve the life of our clients, you know? We've let so much space in the last while. What could we have done differently? I think that's probably going to be an interesting question to go and unpack for a bit, you know? But let's just unpack it quickly. What are we doing in the advisory world? What are we actually doing for our clients in the logistics space? What are we doing for the corporates? What do they want? And how are we finding those requirements at the minute?
Should I answer one or all five of those questions you put in there?
All 5 questions. There's no space to start off with.
There's no space to start off with. Demand is there.
The demand's there, but we're suffering from a situation with lack of stock. Guys haven't built. Steel prices have gone through the roof. So what are guys doing now? Building? Or what sort of solutions are they finding? I mean, one of the ideas that I loved last week was the idea of finding the right solution for the client, rather than, and that's in terms of the whole thinking about the cube, as opposed to just like, running a warehouse and just kind of leaving everything lying over the floor. And often people don't think about it in enough detail to work out how they're going to run their warehouse, So do you think there are opportunities not only to build, but also to find existing stock?
Yeah, a little bit of both there. I think we've got lots of different types of clients, but I think with the situation they find themselves in is they haven't thought about it in advance, right? And that's kind of our job, is to get in there early enough to see, what does their company entail? How does that macro environment and how does their little world essentially revolve around the warehouse and the transport, and where's that heat map? And as I said, those different clients we have, some of them, they just wait too late and they get to a situation where, I actually need to expand. I need a better facility, but I'm actually snookered. I need to get out the one that's inefficient. I need to get a more efficient one. I don't have time to build. So what's my best available option to me? And that's when we go out there and we say, well, actually, there might only be 1 or 2 options. And out of these, you snookered and you're going to take this. Now it's about, do we spend that amount of money in getting that facility kitted out, to make it more efficient? Or is it worth a short-term basis so we can actually build something that is more efficient? We had a situation the other day where, a client wanted 15,000 square meters, and that's what they assumed because of the facility they're currently in.
Yeah.
I think after about 18 months worth of backwards and forwards, they've gone into a 10,000 square meters facility. It was 10,500 square meters. It had the correct floors, they had 2 floors. It went up to the 13.5 meters. It worked way more efficiently than what they previously had, by saving a hell of a lot more money. Yes, they spent more money on their internal operation systems. They had to bring on more staff, huge outlay in their equipment within their warehouse. But at the end of the day, this is their plan now for the next 10 years going forward.
Listen, I mean, in logistics, as we worked out quite quickly playing that game, each little thing matters. The most mundane, tiny, literally 65% of your cost is human capital, basically, right?
Yeah.
The warehouse is actually 15% of your cost. So if you can get people to walk less, if you can create a more efficient operating system in your warehouse, if you can have a better, more customized MHE, you're gonna actually overall optimize your warehouse. So when you're looking at a solution, it's not just it's in the right space. It's actually, is it the right facility?
And one of the things that I took out from that as well is how the different thought processes with a guy who obviously looks at the internal runnings of the warehouse, the guy who looks at obviously how the systems and how that integrates with the warehouse and the transport, And then speaking onto the transport guy, he says, listen, you can't do anything with a warehouse until you've absolutely made your transport absolutely 100% efficient. You can't have a truck arriving and waiting on site for 4 hours. The truck's got to be there half an hour before. It's in for 45 minutes, turn around, and it's out again.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing in the world,
Trucks
right?
take priority, yeah.
Trucks take priority. And it's just gone with this boom of the e-commerce, right? The customer wants to buy something that he's going on one website. If you can get that delivered today or tomorrow, he's not going to go into another website and buy the same product.
What were we calling Wes? What was Wes in the operation? The
warehouse manager.
No.
That's an I saw it.
No, the control tower.
Like, use the control tower.
Yeah.
That's very true. At 6'4", that makes sense.
So, I mean, we looked at efficiency in the warehouses. We looked at complexities of, I mean, what I wanted to chat about a little bit more detail was the complexity of zoning and that kind of thing. Everyone's looking for land at the moment. There's no land, okay, or very little land. I mean, largely the land's held by M&T and Attack, right? We're talking about Joburg, Atterbury and Cape Town, as well as Funamova Venter. That's probably it, right? I mean, there's not a lot more land out there besides for what's controlled by those guys. What's going to happen? I mean, in Joburg, we've got like a lot of service delivery issues. The Attack guys were telling us the other day that, you know, they've got this whole site, but they couldn't get water to the site. Are we seeing this like all over the place? Is that why people can't process land fast enough? Because we know that as soon as that land is processed, guys are going to build on it. It's going to create more business. So how do we actually get that right? I mean, what's happening there? What is the problem?
Money's the problem.
Yeah.
Money is the
decision making.
If we knew that answer, it'd be a lot easier, right? Again, I think the client is snookered into his availability of choices at that predetermined point in time where he needs to get this facility or where they need to build or start planning with it, right? If we did a heat map on their central, you know, point where they need to be, how close is that point to the next available thing? And that's, you know, it might not be in the right node, but then how do the arterials work? You know, is there traffic in those things? Do we have to deal with coming back into Joburg? And is the client also based in Pretoria? Does the R21 actually make sense? Or is it like a waterfall where it's closer to Johannesburg on the Allendale interchange? You know, some clients, as we see in the heavy manufacturing guys, they're probably more on the other side of Boksburg at the moment. You know, land's a little bit cheaper, probably get power a little bit better, and there's some of them on Eskom lines. So, I mean, when you're evaluating a client, we have to list all those options, put them in front of the client and say, this is our recommendation, but how does it work differently than with how your company's seeing it?
Yeah. For me, again, though, the number one thing outside of that network mapping, okay, which is a critical aspect, but taken into account with the network mapping, we should be looking at people in the warehouse. You know, how can we optimize that? How can we get, you know, we looked at it very clearly. Cross-docking warehouse makes life very simple, okay? However, you'll get guys, the European guys come in, they want an in and out. They want a U-flow warehouse. That, you know, that's just what they're used to. However, they're going to look at those efficiencies of cross-docking warehouse, completely different market. However, a cross-docking warehouse you're going to be paying top numbers for. Can you justify it? You know, is your logistics cost or your building cost 15%? Cross-docking makes your human capital more efficient. That's a big saving, you know.
Massive
you could take
saving.
if you take a clip off 5% there, that's 33% of the warehouse cost, which is significant.
Look, I think it's from the international standards. You know, a lot of the clients we work with, they're looking at the big brother or cousin companies or sisters, whatever you want to call it, to say, okay, how are you guys doing it? What's best practice in Europe, in the States, Asia Pacific? And the one thing that we have here, fortunately, that they don't have, is we've got accessibility to land at better prices.
Yeah.
It's just, it's expensive that side. And where those markets keep on growing, I think they're forced into a process where they do have that U-shaped or the L-shaped warehouses. It's just what's available, what it is, and the price of building that warehouse. Whereas, yes, looking at it on paper, a cross-docking facility is way more expensive than one of these facilities. But in the long run, as you said early on, with that cost of human capital, it's much more efficient. It's just, can you deal with that upfront cost until that warehouse is going?
I love it. So, you know, what's of interest in taking into account we were in a 125,000 square meter DC the other day, brand new, state of the art, unbelievable thing, you know, just in terms of every single element has been thought about throughout the entire facility. You were chatting to me just now, guys have built their facility or moved into a facility 10, 20 years ago even now. They're almost outdated already. with what's there. I mean, let's chat about some of the things that we saw in that warehouse.
Wow. Where to even begin?
Yeah.
The thing that amazed me most is how they mitigated the amount of walking time that an employee has to go from one place to the next in order to efficiently do their job. Within the warehouse, it was, I think, 15.5 meters to the eaves. There were also 3 levels of mezzanine in there, all automated between the levels. And that just sorted out the inefficiencies that they had experienced in past projects.
Yeah.
I also thought it was quite amazing how the transport division, almost had their own 10,000 square meters to the warehouse, where the transport couldn't interact with the warehouse staff.
Yeah.
It was absolutely incredible to see. I like their sustainability efforts, how they just figured out, just how much dew the warehouse collects on a roof is enough to keep the attenuation pond filled. It's amazing.
What I thought was fascinating as well, I mean, this has got nothing to do with technology, but it's got to do with, recently we saw these riots in Durban, right? Well, recently, probably, 2 years ago now, right? But they've taken such dramatic steps to actually protect that warehouse. I mean, just the fencing around that warehouse must be, 20 meters high? Easy 20 meters high. Water cannons, ability to store like millions of cubic liters of water, so and tunnels and escape routes and security systems and warehouse management systems, transport management systems, inventory management systems, just layered on top of one another. So, you were talking about people getting kept into a zone. You'll arrive into that warehouse, you'll be in your zone, and you'll never be expected to walk outside of your zone. It's inefficient for you to do that. If you got to walk from one end of that warehouse, I mean, I think we hit like a couple of thousand steps just walking around having a look, So you can imagine if you're inefficient in what you're doing and your product's coming in, moving through that rack, moving out the other side, if you've got to go to the other end of the warehouse, you're actually lost as a person who you're paying to be there for a day, So no, I 100% agree with you. It's something for, you almost want to have an audit of what you're currently doing. And the worst problem is that ultimately you're in a business, you're doing it one day. If you're not interacting with other people from other businesses or guys who are logistics professionals, some of the guys we worked with are sort of PhD logistics guys, it's if you don't have that experience and you're not calculating to the absolute cent to the second what is happening in that warehouse every day, you can lose money unbelievably. And let's talk about trucks, right? It costs like 80 grand to replace the trucks replace the wheels on the tires on a Superlink. Okay, it's burning 500,000 rand in fuel every month. You got to go for a service.
4,000 to 5,000 rand a day in
400,000.
Yeah, 400,000.
It's got.
Mercy, misunderstand
they're doing
that.
80 liters per kilometer. They're doing services every 3 months. I mean, if you get that marginally wrong, they're onto the guys. As soon as the guys start using 100 liters per 100 kilometers, per 100 kilometers, 100 liters per 100 kilometers, suddenly it's like, get that guy in. Have you got a heavy foot? What are you doing? Is there something wrong with the truck? You've got to monitor it unbelievably, and so to the warehouses, So if that's not in place, especially with the bigger stuff, the 10,000 square meters plus warehouses, you can lose money like hand over fist. So those efficiencies should always be renewed. Even if you've been in a warehouse for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, renew the efficiencies, have a look at it, understand exactly how you move through that warehouse, understand your transport management system, where everything is positioned in a warehouse, and try and calculate down to the absolute cent and second.
The word was unit of measure.
Yes. What's your unit of measure?
He gave us an example of, there was a 70-year-old plus company that had been doing their own operation of logistics for, since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
And they didn't actually know what their unit of measure is. How that container or truck comes into the warehouse, what box, how big does that box come, how does it get unpacked, where does it go, what does it get unpacked, and then how does it actually leave the thing? And what is that absolute unit of measure? The guys didn't know it. They spent, I think you said 3 to 4 weeks just before they did anything else, just getting as much data as they could to work out to N3 how that unit of measure moved from A to B.
Yeah.
And then from there, they built everything else around it.
Well, they went from 120,000 squares to 45,000 squares.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty radical saving,
Yeah.
And you can imagine reducing that much square meterage reduces the number of people required. optimize the storage in the warehouse significantly, and at the same time, you get to do a network mapping and have a look. Yeah, fascinating. I love it.
Amazing.
Jazzy, thank you.
Thank you.
It's been good. Tell us about a deal you've done recently.
Which
You're
one?
so secretive.
Which one?
You're so secretive.
I've got an amazing deal that at the moment where the company's growing at an exponential rate, and over the time they've just gone, starting from 2,000 square meters to 4,000 square meters to 10,000 square meters. Now they're currently sitting at about 23,000 square meters. We're going to move them to, upwards of, between 35 and 50,000 square meters. And we're running this process currently. How does their units of measure work, and how do the process lines and flows, and how is it all put together to correctly maximize, one, their growth potential, because that's the biggest thing. How big can they actually go while still not being constrained by what the property is? So what is the right call now, and what's going to last them the next 5, 7, 10 years?
You got to sit with your sort of, they call it mother warehouse.
Yeah.
And once you've set that up, then you can expand from there. But when you think that you're at your maximum, consider that 85%. Give yourself another 15%. I think that was the learning that we got.
Mark's rule.
Yeah, Mark's rule. Thank you.
Thank you.